My stepdaughter said I should disappear. Her dad agreed. Agents crashed dinner, so I watched as his carefully constructed world and their complicity imploded. The moment I watched my stepdaughter's biological father get handcuffed in that upscale restaurant, surrounded by federal agents while his face drained of all color, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: complete vindication. Miles Patterson, you're under arrest for securities fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes, the lead agent announced as every head in the restaurant turned toward our table. Miles had been mid-sentence, explaining to potential investors how his guaranteed tech startup would triple their money within 6 months, when his world collapsed around him. But let me back up, because this story really began 3 weeks earlier when my 16-year-old stepdaughter Stella looked me dead in the eye and said, "Why don't you just disappear? Nobody asked you to try so hard." It's pathetic. Her mother, my wife Delilah, had sat there cutting her chicken and quietly agreed. "Maybe we'd all be better off if you did." Those words hit me like a physical blow, but what came next was worse. That night, as I packed my bags in our bedroom, I could hear them whispering downstairs, their voices carrying a relief I'd never heard before. The next morning brought the cruelest discovery of all. Walking into our living room with my coffee, something felt wrong. The house was too quiet, too deliberate in its silence. Then I saw them. Every single family photograph had been altered. In our wedding pictures, vacation shots, birthday celebrations spanning 3 years, I had been carefully erased. Not removed entirely, mind you, but cut out with surgical precision, leaving awkward gaps where I once stood smiling beside them. The frame above our fireplace from our Yellowstone trip last summer told the story most clearly. There was Stella, there was Delilah, there was the beautiful landscape, and there was an empty space shaped exactly like me. I stood there watching the steam rise from my untouched coffee, realizing that my absence hadn't just been discussed, it had been methodically planned. Stella's footsteps on the stairs told me she knew I had discovered their handiwork. She appeared in the kitchen doorway, phone in hand, deliberately avoiding eye contact as she grabbed juice from the refrigerator. "Morning," I said, keeping my voice neutral. The silence that followed felt heavy with intention, loaded with 3 years of carefully constructed resentment I hadn't fully understood until that moment. You see, I'd been in Stella's life since she was 13. Those crucial years when trust either forms or fractures permanently. We built something real together. Or so I thought. Movie nights where she'd actually laugh at my terrible dad jokes. Late night conversations about boys and friendships and dreams. That proud moment when she asked me, not her mother, to help pick out her prom dress. I'd been there for math homework, driving lessons, college preparation, everything a father should do. But apparently, everything a father figure could never truly be. The week leading up to their coordinated attack had been filled with small, deliberate cruelties I'd attributed to normal teenage rebellion. Dishes left pointedly in the sink, doors closing just a bit too hard when I approached, conversations that stopped mid-sentence whenever I entered a room. Delilah had grown increasingly distant too, deflecting every attempt I made to discuss the growing tension. "She's just being a teenager, Thomas. Don't make it about you," she'd say, but her tone suggested she was already choosing sides. The explosion came during dinner when Stella was texting against our established family rules. I gently reminded her about our no phones policy, trying to maintain some semblance of normal family structure. She threw her phone down with theatrical force and glared at me with genuine hatred. "God, why are you always policing everything I do? Why can't you just leave me alone?" When I tried to respond calmly, she stood up so abruptly her chair scraped against the floor. "To what? Play dad? I already have one. Why don't you just disappear? Nobody asked you to try so hard." It's pathetic. I looked at Delilah then, expecting support, mediation, something that acknowledged 3 years of marriage and partnership. Instead, she set down her fork with deliberate calm and said quietly, "Maybe we'd all be better off if you did." The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire that had been smoldering for months without my knowledge. 3 years of shared memories flashed through my mind. Stella's first genuine laugh at one of my jokes, the night she called me crying after her first heartbreak, the proud smile on Delilah's face when Stella asked me to help with her college applications. I stood up slowly, my dinner half eaten, and said simply, "Okay." Stella challenged me with a sharp, "Okay, what?" But there was something flickering in her eyes, uncertainty perhaps, as if she hadn't expected such calm acceptance. "If that's how you both feel, okay. I'll respect that." I walked upstairs to our bedroom and pulled out my old duffel bag, the same one I'd used when I moved in 3 years earlier. I could hear them whispering downstairs, their voices carrying an excitement they weren't bothering to hide anymore. My hands weren't shaking as I packed enough clothes for several days. I felt oddly calm, as if some part of me had been waiting for this inevitable moment. When I came downstairs, Stella had disappeared to her room, probably already texting her friends about her victory. Delilah stood in the kitchen doorway with her arms crossed, attempting to look conflicted but failing to hide her relief. "So, you're just leaving? That's your solution?" she asked. "You said you'd be better off," I replied, checking for my keys and wallet. "I'm respecting that decision." She started to say something else, started to claim she didn't mean it, but pride or anger or some other emotion held her back. I picked up my bag and paused at the door. "You know, when Stella said those things before, it hurt. But hearing you agree with her, Dell, that broke something I don't think can be fixed." I drove to my friend Ryan's place in complete silence, and he took one look at me and set up his guest room without asking questions. That's the kind of friend he is. I turned off my phone and took a sleeping pill from my travel kit, desperate for unconsciousness. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains. And when I finally turned on my phone, it exploded with notifications. 13 missed calls, 8 from Delilah, 3 from Stella, 2 from my sister Quinn, 27 text messages, 4 voicemails. I didn't listen to them immediately. Instead, I sat in Ryan's guest room watching the morning traffic below, thinking about those empty spaces in our family photos, wondering if they'd always been there, and I'd just been too hopeful to see them. That's when Ryan dropped his bombshell over breakfast. "Miles is back in town," he said, sliding his phone across the table. There on Facebook was a photo of Stella's biological father, tagged at a local restaurant just 2 weeks ago. The same Miles who hadn't paid child support in 3 years, who'd missed Stella's last 4 birthdays, who'd broken more promises than I could count. Suddenly, the timing of everything made terrible sense. My sister Quinn appeared around lunchtime, armed with coffee, and that determined look she gets when she's about to meddle in someone's life for their own good. "You look like hell," she announced, dropping onto Ryan's couch. "Thanks, always good to see you too, sis." But she wasn't smiling. "I ran into Stella at the mall yesterday. She was meeting Miles for coffee." Quinn watched my reaction carefully. She looked hopeful, you know that expression she gets when she's trying not to get too excited about something? Like she's afraid to believe something good is really happening? I knew exactly what she meant. It was the same look Stella had when she got accepted to that competitive summer program last year, like she was protecting herself from disappointment, even while allowing herself to dream. "Did you know Miles has been messaging her for months?" Quinn continued, promising to make things right this time, filling her head with dreams about their future together. My stomach twisted as I checked Stella's Instagram, something I rarely did. Her latest post was a photo of her with Miles, captioned "Real Family Time," with heart emojis from friends who knew nothing about our history. Ryan, who'd been quietly listening, spoke up with grim familiarity. "Remember what happened last time he showed up? When Stella was 13, I remembered. Miles had swept in with grand promises of father-daughter trips and college funds, lasted exactly 2 weeks, then disappeared again when reality set in. Stella hadn't gotten out of bed for days afterward. Delilah and I had spent months rebuilding her trust, convincing her she was worthy of love, that she deserved better than empty promises. As if summoned by our conversation, my phone lit up with a text from Delilah. He's asking her to move in with him. She's actually considering it. "Please, Thomas, I know you're angry with me, but she needs you." I started typing several responses, deleted them all. What could I say? "Sorry you told me to disappear, but now you need me to reappear?" The whole situation felt like a cosmic joke designed specifically to torment me. Then came another notification. Stella's new Instagram story. A picture of college brochures spread across her bed with the caption, "Big changes coming. Sometimes you have to choose your real path." Those were Miles' exact words from 3 years ago, right before he moved across the country for his real path and stopped answering Stella's calls entirely. Quinn must have seen something change in my expression because she leaned forward with concern. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about the day I married Delilah," I said slowly. "Remember Stella's speech at the reception? How she said sometimes family finds you when you're not looking for it, when you need it most. And now she's posting about her real family and her real path while Miles plays Father of the Year." My phone started ringing then, interrupting my bitter thoughts. Unknown number. "Thomas, this is Miss Anderson from Riverside High. I'm Stella's guidance counselor. I know this is unusual, but I need to speak with you about some concerning changes in Stella's academic plans and recent behavior. Would you be able to come in tomorrow morning?" I agreed to the meeting, my mind racing. Stella had maintained straight A's since freshman year, determined to get into a good college, focused on her future. What could have changed so dramatically? After I hung up, Quinn and Ryan were both watching me with expectant expressions. So? Quinn prompted. So I think it's time to stop being silent, I replied, finally opening the voicemail from Stella. Her voice was small, stripped of its usual confidence. I know you probably hate me now, and I get it. I just need to tell you something about why I said those things about Miles. Just please call me back. There was something in her voice that reminded me of the 13-year-old girl who used to check the mailbox every day, hoping for a letter from her father that never came. I'm meeting with a guidance counselor tomorrow at 9, I told them. After that, I think it's time for some honest conversations. Because the thing about disappearing is sometimes it lets you see things more clearly from a distance. The next morning at Riverside High, I watched students rushing to first period, a few of Stella's classmates recognizing me with quick glances and whispers that told me rumors were already circulating about my absence. Miss Anderson didn't waste time once I sat down in her office. Stella submitted paperwork to withdraw from her advanced placement classes yesterday, she said, sliding a form across her desk. She's also dropping French club and student council. When I asked why, she said she's transferring schools next semester. My chest tightened. These were programs Stella had fought to get into, extracurriculars she'd been counting on for college applications, the foundation of everything she'd worked toward. There's more, Miss Anderson continued, watching my face carefully. Last week she asked me to send her transcripts to 3 different schools, all in California, the same city where Miles recently purchased property. That's when all the pieces started falling into place with sickening clarity. I pulled out my phone, showing her Miles' recent text about his big announcement. Let me guess, I said. He's opening a new business out there, needs family to support his venture? She nodded grimly. Stella mentioned something about a startup, said her father needs family investors to get it off the ground, that it's a guaranteed opportunity. The familiar sick feeling returned, the same one I'd gotten 3 years ago when Miles had convinced Delilah to loan him money for a sure-thing business venture. Money we never saw again. I left the school and drove straight to our house. Delilah's car was in the driveway, and through the window I could see her pacing in the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear. She spotted me and rushed to open the door before I could even knock. He asked her for money, she said immediately, her voice cracking. Her college fund. He's been filling her head with promises about this tech startup, saying if she invests now, she'll make enough to pay for any college she wants. Where is she? I asked. Coffee with Miles again. I tried telling her it's a scam, but she accused me of being jealous that he's finally stepping up. She said at least he believes in her dreams. I sat down at our kitchen counter, the same spot where everything had fallen apart a week ago. Why didn't you tell me he was back? Delilah shook her head miserably. I tried to handle it myself, thought if I kept them apart, kept the situation contained. Then you and Stella had that fight, and she said those terrible things, and I panicked. I sided with her because I was afraid if I didn't, she'd choose him completely, and I'd lose her forever. Before I could respond, the front door opened, and Stella walked in, freezing when she saw me sitting there. She looked different, makeup done more carefully than usual, wearing an expensive jacket Miles must have bought her. But her eyes were red-rimmed, betraying the confidence she was trying to project. What are you doing here? She asked, but the usual edge was missing from her voice, replaced by something that sounded almost like relief. Dropping your AP classes? Really? I kept my tone gentle, non-confrontational. What happened to the Stanford plans? She mumbled something about plans changing, refusing to meet my eyes. Dad says, she started, then caught herself. Miles says, I corrected quietly, and something flickered across her face, a brief crack in her carefully constructed facade. He has connections out there. The startup is guaranteed to succeed, just like the classic car dealership was guaranteed, or the food truck franchise. I pulled out my laptop, opening the documents I'd spent the morning gathering while she was out. I did some digging. Want to see Miles' current business registration status? Or his credit report? Or maybe the 3 pending lawsuits from his last guaranteed investment opportunity? Stella's hands trembled as she took the laptop, and with each click, each document that revealed another layer of Miles' deception, the careful facade cracked a little more. When she reached the lawsuit from his previous stepdaughter's grandmother, seeking to recover college funds he'd borrowed and never returned, the first tear fell. He said he's changed, she whispered, her voice barely audible. He said he wants to make up for lost time, that we could be a real family if I just proved I was choosing him. She looked up at me suddenly, and I saw the lost 13-year-old girl she'd once been. The photo albums. He said I had to prove I was choosing him, that you were the reason he stayed away, because you took his place. Oh, sweetie. Delilah moved toward her, but Stella stepped back, as if physical comfort might break her resolve entirely. I knew, she whispered. Deep down, I think I always knew, but I wanted so badly to believe. Her phone buzzed with another text from Miles, and she stared at it for a long moment before turning it off completely. "I have to go," she said abruptly, heading for the stairs. "I just need to think about everything." We let her go. Sometimes space is the kindest thing you can offer someone whose world is crumbling. Hours passed while Delilah and I talked, really talked for the first time in weeks. About fears and mistakes, about Stella and Miles, about us and whether there was still an us to salvage. Around midnight, as I was getting ready to head back to Ryan's, my phone lit up with a text from Stella. "I messed up. Everything's messed up. Can we talk? I mean really talk. Not about Miles or money or any of this mess. Just remember when we used to get ice cream after my dance classes, and you let me rant about school drama? Could we maybe do that? I know I don't deserve it, but I'm typing this from the car, parked outside our local ice cream place. It's technically closed, but the owner knows us, knows we've been coming here for 3 years, and he's staying open late just for us." Stella just pulled up in her mother's car, and she's sitting there probably working up the courage to come in, just like I am. Sometimes the hardest conversations start with the smallest steps, or in this case, with mint chocolate chip ice cream at midnight. That night at the ice cream shop changed everything between us. Stella talked for hours about Miles' manipulation, her fears, her guilt, but it was something she mentioned in passing that caught my attention and sparked an idea that would lead to justice. Miles had been asking her to convince her friend's parents to invest in his startup too, targeting families through their children. Something clicked in my mind as I remembered the lawsuits I'd found, the pattern of behavior that went far beyond simple deadbeat father territory. "You know," I said carefully, "what he's doing isn't just morally wrong. It's illegal." Stella looked up from her melting ice cream with confusion. I explained about securities fraud, about running unauthorized investment schemes, about targeting minors for financial crimes. Her eyes widened as she pulled out her phone, showing me the group chats where Miles had been directly soliciting investments from teenagers, promising them commissions for bringing in their families. That night, after dropping Stella home, I made strategic phone calls. Quinn has a friend at the SEC. Ryan knows someone in the DA's office. And by morning, I had a plan that would ensure Miles never hurt another family again. The investigators were very interested in Miles' operation, especially when they learned he'd been specifically targeting families with teenage children, using emotional manipulation to bypass normal adult skepticism. Miles didn't see it coming because he was too focused on his grand finale, the big announcement dinner where he planned to convince Stella to sign over her college fund. He'd even invited some of her friends' parents, more potential targets for his web of lies. The dinner was at an expensive restaurant, and Miles was in his element, talking about Silicon Valley connections and guaranteed returns. His charm turned up to maximum wattage. I waited until the appetizers arrived before standing up calmly. "Before we continue," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the table, "there are some people who'd like to join us." On cue, 2 federal agents and a state investigator walked in, badges clearly visible. Miles' face went from confident to confused to absolutely terrified in the space of 3 seconds. "Miles Patterson," the lead agent announced, "you're under arrest for securities fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes." It turns out Miles wasn't just running one small-time scam. The investigators had uncovered 7 different fraudulent schemes across 3 states, a pattern of behavior spanning years. Every time he'd reconnected with Stella over the years, he'd been setting up new victims, using their relationship as an entry point to target other families. The classic car dealership that had cost Delilah her savings was part of a larger fraud network. The food truck franchise followed the same pattern, all connected to Miles' sophisticated operation. But here's the beautiful part of his downfall. He'd gotten sloppy this time, overconfident in his ability to manipulate Stella. He'd documented everything in texts and emails, thinking she'd never turn against him. When she forwarded those messages to the investigators, his fate was sealed completely. The parents at the dinner had been wearing recording devices, and every promise, every lie, every illegal investment pitch was captured on tape. Miles tried to run when he realized what was happening, actually knocked over a waiter, and sprinted for the restaurant door like a common criminal. He made it exactly 3 steps before security tackled him to the ground. As they led him away in handcuffs, he looked at Stella with that manipulative puppy dog expression she'd fallen for so many times before. "Sweetie, this is all a misunderstanding," he called out desperately. "Tell them I'm your father. Tell them you know I'd never hurt you." Stella stood up slowly, her shoulders straight and her voice clear as crystal. "My father's right here," she said, taking my hand firmly in hers. "And he just watched you get exactly what you deserve." The look of shock and betrayal on Miles' face as he realized his own daughter had orchestrated his downfall was worth every moment of pain he'd caused our family. The aftermath was intense and public. News coverage, victim statements, more families coming forward as word spread about Miles' arrest. The investigators eventually found over $2.3 million in stolen funds, money that had been taken from families like ours across multiple states. Miles is facing 15 to 20 years in federal prison, and his fictitious startup was revealed to be nothing more than a website and some stolen photos of a real tech company's office. But the real victory wasn't watching Miles get arrested, satisfying as that was. It was the small moments that followed, the gradual rebuilding of trust and family bonds. Stella put all her photos with Miles in a box and donated them to the prosecution as evidence. Evidence, she called it with a hint of her old smile returning. She reapplied for her AP classes, and the school was remarkably understanding given the circumstances. Her friends' parents, instead of being angry about the close call with fraud, formed a support group for families affected by similar scams. Something good emerging from something awful, which felt like the kind of justice the universe rarely provides. Last night, Stella asked me to help her with her college essays, grinning as she said, "I have a pretty unique story now. How many people can write about taking down their biological father's fraud empire? Delilah and I are in counseling, working through the trust issues and communication problems that made this situation possible. There are wounds to heal and mistakes to forgive on both sides." But watching Stella carefully place the photos of me back in the family albums, straightening each one with deliberate care, said more than any words could express about where we stand now. This morning, Stella came down for breakfast early, carrying an envelope. "I found this in my room," she said, sliding it across the table. "Miles asked me to mail it last week. It's investment paperwork for his startup. I thought maybe you'd want to add it to the evidence file." I looked at the envelope, then at her expectant face. "Want to deliver it to the investigators together?" Her grin was real and unguarded, the smile I'd missed seeing for months. "Can we get ice cream after?" Some people might say the revenge was too harsh, that family is family no matter what they've done. But real family doesn't try to steal your future or manipulate your emotions for financial gain. Real family protects you, even if that means protecting you from other family members who've lost their way. Miles' sentencing is next month, and Stella's planning to read a victim impact statement she's been working on for weeks, revising each word carefully. Yesterday, she asked me to look it over. "It needs a good ending," she said thoughtfully. "Something that shows I'm not just his victim anymore, that I'm moving forward." I think she's already found that ending though. It's in the way she holds her head up now, and how she's helping other teenagers spot similar scams, and the college brochures back on her desk representing her real path, not the one Miles tried to sell her. Sometimes moving forward means making sure the past can't hurt anyone else, and sometimes the best revenge isn't just watching someone face consequences for their actions. It's thriving despite them, building something better from the wreckage they left behind. We're having a family dinner tonight, just the three of us, and Stella's making her famous pasta sauce, the one she learned from watching cooking videos with me during lockdown. Normal, boring, wonderful family stuff. The kind of life Miles will have plenty of time to think about from his federal prison cell.